Okay, so number 3, monopolist does not have a supply curve. That's because, put that in, supply curve, because firm is the market. So think of pure competition. Make your arms into an X, supply and demand. That supply curve for the industry is made up of all the MCs, the marginal cost curves of all the firms. So if you think back to the perfect competition with the MC and the ATC and that perfectly elastic demand, all the MCs put together make up the supply curve for an industry. But here, the market is the firm. So there is no technical supply curve. The monopolist, A, is always going to set price in the elastic region of demand. That you can just go back to that original graph when we had a downward sloping demand curve, and underneath it we had the upside down U, total revenue curve. If you remember the 3 segments, elastic, inelastic, and unit elastic, well, the left portion of it was elastic, and that's where the total revenue curve was going up. If you don't know what I'm talking about, rewind what I just said and actually sketch it. But you should know from previous review session. Last one here, what is price discrimination? Write this in. Monopoly power to charge different customers different prices, but not based on resource costs. So, for example, if I charge you $10 for a highlighter, then I charge someone else $15, but I charge them $15 because the highlighter was made out of glass and the other highlighter was plastic. The difference in price I charged was because of the resource costs. I used different inputs. But if I have 2 identical highlighters and I sell one for 10, one for 15, that's price discrimination. We see that all the time. Movies, senior citizens get half off. Those are different prices to customers based on age, not based on resource cost. Okay, looking at monopoly in depth and government regulating. Why would the government regulate? Number 1, if the price in the market were too high. Number 2, if output were too little. So cucumbers, let's say there was a monopoly, there's not, but if there were, and we needed 100 cucumbers in a week, and we only got 50, the government would be like, oh, we need to do something to make sure society gets fed. Okay, so I want you to write this down in that blank space underneath 1 and 2. Look at the graphs, and you want to be thinking about what's allocatively inefficient. Well, look at this graph here on this slide, where we're at. MR equals MC is a quantity. Put your finger on where supply equals demand. That would be where MC crosses D. Point to that. If our quantity is less than socially optimal, this then is a shortage, so that's a problem. So redraw this, push pause, redraw it, monopoly, earning, profit, draw the graph. Now let's draw profit loss. Same thing. You draw ATC last, because ATC now has to be above where our price is. So then you shade in your loss. And you have, well, what if the government was regulating? So go back to a profit graph. Redraw it. Draw the same thing again. Okay, the thing that I marked here is the red dot. You mark it. That's where supply equals demand. MB equals MC. Draw that dot that I did in red. Draw a line all the way down it and label it QS for socially optimal. That is what society wants. Now, notice, I don't draw it here, but I want you to take that point, go up to the ATC curve, and make a little rectangle out of that. That would be lost. A government cannot expect a monopolist to stay in business and take a loss based on a law. So what they would do is they would say, okay, we're going to at least let you break even. Put your finger on that dot. You're going to go up the demand curve all the way until you would break even. Stop when you get to the ATC curve. If the price equals ATC, then they're breaking even. Mark that on the graph. I've marked it in green. Make the dot where demand equals ATC. This is called a fair return price. This dog here is a miniature pinscher. This is Brian's dog, soon to be my dog. His name is Tyson Gurr with 7 R's. Literally, they registered him as Tyson with the last name Gurr, 7 R's, named after Mike Tyson. And that team, I will not say it, but the mat he is standing on is Brian's favorite team. So remember who that is. Come to me and I will ask you a couple questions and you should be able to answer it. Okay, turn the next page, monopolistic competition. Because there are many substitutes in monopolistic competitive markets, demand is relatively Well, if there are substitutes and the price of one cake company goes up, I can just go find another cake company. So we call that elastic. Fill that in, elastic. What is distinct about this market structure is what we call, write it down, product differentiation. Product differentiation and advertising. Product differentiation means making your product look better in some way. Write this down. Non-price competition. So you're not getting people to buy your cakes because you have cheaper prices. That is not non-price competition. That's not product differentiation. It would be, I'm going to give you any color icing, or I'm going to make it into a Barbie or a Thomas the Train. That's product differentiation. And you want to write advertising. So non-price competition, advertising, and product differentiation are unique to this market structure. How is it more like competition? Write this down. Low barriers of entry, sustain normal profit, meaning breaking even. And the last thing you want to write is low economies of scale. Low economies of scale. Okay, you want to draw these two graphs that I have here. The first and the second one. Push, pause, draw them. Okay. The economies of scale, right? Label these under economies of scale. Write this down. Decreasing costs per unit as output increases. So when I say output increases, my finger is going along the x-axis to the right. Well, my quantity is going up. But my ATC curve is downward sloping. That means my costs per unit are actually going down. At some point, that stops. And the more of a product you make, the more it costs per unit. That is called diseconomies of scale. You want to be in the economies of scale part. I don't know if you can hear Tyson barking in the background. Sorry. Okay, if you notice, for the left graph, I want you to label competition, monopolistic competition. You want to be, and I would write this down, at ATC's minimum to be in business. It's easier in the first graph, competition and monopolistic competition, to get to that point. The quantity is a lot less. For me to be at minimum ATC costs for monopolistic competition cake making, I only maybe have to make 100. Look at the next one. I want you to title it oligopoly or monopoly. Look at where your economies of scale stop. That quantity might be 1,000. Making 100 cakes is easier than making 1,000 cars. You just don't have the ability as a new business to do that. That's called, write it down, the graph on the right, extensive economies of scale. And it's the comparison between where the minimum ATC is. Okay, last thing here before you get to do practice problems, oligopoly. Number one, so it's just the graph. I think we did in the middle. Yeah, in the middle. Game theory. That is the next review session topic. So we're not going to go into the payoff matrix, but I do want you to write next to game theory, payoff matrix, non-collusion. If you don't know what that means, write this down. They don't work together. And write this down. They consider the actions of their rival companies. They consider the actions of their rival companies. And one more thing you want to write under that game theory. Strategic behavior. These are all unique things to oligopolies. Draw a little box and divide the box into 4. There'll be numbers in there. Payoff matrix. We'll deal with that later. Number 2, what is a cartel? Write this down. Small group of colluders. That means companies that work together. And how do they work together? Write this down. They set prices that they all follow, or quotas, a certain amount that you'll be producing. Number 3, what is collusive behavior? Write that down again. Working together, set prices or quotas. Just repeat that, set prices or quotas. 4, what is the relationship between firms? Write this down. Interdependent. They depend upon each other. There are so few of them that if one company makes a move, it's going to affect all of them. Whereas in pure competition, there are hundreds, so if one takes a stand, it's not really going to make that big of a difference. 5, what problem do oligopolies face? Write this down. A company could cheat. Okay, you could decide to set everyone set prices really high, and if everyone does that and one person cheats, every customer is going to buy from the cheater because their prices are lower. So you end up being worse off. So the problem is they could cheat, and so you would end up worse off. And we will in the next review session do practice problems on this.